was so excited I was willing to look at his project, his resort for selling children. He leans forward, he goes, Pablo, I have a gift for you. I said, well, really, what's your gift? He hands me his phone, and there's a picture of an 11-year-old child on his phone, a little girl. He said, this is Princess. She's still a virgin. We just took delivery of some, and she's my gift for you for this party. And he started talking about horrific things I could do to this child. And I thought, oh my God, if we could get these children out before they're ever raped the first time, that would be a miracle, because you don't have to deal with all the trauma. And something he said made me realize he had more than her.
Nice to meet you, man.
It's great to meet you as well. So you're in
Thanks for coming on the
Australia.
show. I really appreciate you, buddy. I've been listening to a bunch of your previous podcasts, and you're a really interesting guy. I got to tell you.
Oh, thank you. I've lived a colorful life, and I'm incredibly blessed for the opportunity to have made a small dent in this world.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know about a small dent. I think there's definitely a lot of impact that you're making, and I think the ripple effect, you would agree, kind of, it's the ripple that sort of touches the shores. You know what I mean? It's one of those things where I think, especially it seems now, I'm not sure if you agree, but it seems now that what you started, I mean, you're a part of a much bigger piece of the puzzle that's kind of like just forever expanded. And now in particularly, it seems like it's really like, right in front of everyone's faces. Would you agree?
Absolutely. I don't think that the general public would be as fierce at demanding for transparency with the Epstein situation if they hadn't been awakened a few years ago with the movie Sound of Freedom. And hundreds of millions of children are safer now because of that global awareness. And countries are changing laws and policies, and good people everywhere are paying better attention to what's going on. And we're demanding transparency from our leaders when it comes to anything regarding the abuse of children.
Yeah, for sure. And I also think too, Paul, is that it's exposing almost the hypocrisy of how little repercussions there are for these people and individuals on a low level and high level, versus like a really good example here in Australia. I'm not quite sure what it's like in the US at the moment, but we've got a gentleman here in Australia that's literally been given 12 months imprisonment for hate speech or just saying unkind things at a rally, right? Versus I think it's either a primary school teacher or a principal who's had 32,000 images of child exploitation and child pornography, and he got a 3-month probation. But he's actually working with kids. Like, I don't know if you have examples of that in the States, or if you know a thing, but it just seems fucking ridiculous that is actually happening. But because, like you said, the transparency is happening and people are getting exposed to this, you can just see that it's almost like the people that are not doing that much in terms of bad things are getting a hard rap, and those that are doing heinous things are getting off.
Absolutely. I've seen it with here in the US back in the late 60s. President Nixon decided to throw a whole bunch of things under the bus and schedule and identify them as what we call Schedule 1 drugs. We're talking about things like mushrooms, like psilocybin, that scientifically have been proven to help people overcome anxiety, depression, PTSD. Yet you have a handful of that in your pocket, you go to prison for a long, long time. You end up abusing children, you get a slap on the wrist. It's unbelievable how upside down some of these rules and regulations are. And it's all about money. It's all about control. And it's something that we all need to pay attention to if we're going to really revolutionize this world and come into a place where we can not have things like child trafficking.
Yeah, for sure. And it also exposes the system as being corrupt as well. Like it
In
seems
every
like,
way.
you've got pedophiles protecting pedophiles, and they are in the, like I call them criminals in suits. They're just the depiction of someone who is raping, torturing, killing kids and things like that is like this evil, grotesque human being that's just an absolute fucking monster, right? But they're not. These are court judges, they're high-ranking police officers, they're politicians. I mean, they're wealthy people.
Yeah, yeah. I've said this a million times. My very first undercover operation, I thought that I was going to see tattoos on their necks and earrings on their noses and dreadlocks and this image of these guys who are disconnected from society that were abusing the children. But the truth was the traffickers across the board. I led more than 70 undercover child rescue missions in 15
Wow.
countries, and across the board, the common thread wasn't earrings and tattoos. The common thread was arrogance and greed and lust and in many cases generational trauma, and I saw it over and over. And sadly, we've all heard the saying, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Well, sadly, when you get in a position where you're a billionaire, you're a federal judge, you're a government institution, that absolute power corrupts absolutely. And sadly, it's something where they feel they can get away with whatever they want. Now, the guys who were trafficking kids weren't always the elite and the wealthy. I know these kind of things happen all over the place, and it's something that if you walk out your front door in any city, not just third world countries and Mexico, Colombia, whatever, you in any affluent neighborhood in the world, and you look left, you look right, as you're walking outside your front door, there's a very high chance one of those houses is a dangerous place for children. And the statistics prove that 1 out of every 4 women were abused as a child. 1 out of every 5 men at some time in our life, but most of us as a child. In fact, 1/4 of them was under the age of 10 years old in their own homes or their own neighborhoods. And so it's so important that we're paying attention. Otherwise, it goes unchecked.
Absolutely. Paul, I wanted to ask you, with your history, I mean, I wouldn't mind you explaining a depiction of the version of Paul that was prior to the missions, prior to the Sound of Freedom. Like, can you explain that version in terms of who you were as a person, as a man, like, what was going on in your life? Is there anything you can share with me that kind of depicts that model or that version of yourself that you're projecting in the world at that moment?
Well, I grew up in a healthy home and I was taught, good moral standing and whatnot, but I also achieved massive success at a very young age. I built a company in my 20s that helped people overcome anxiety, depression, PTSD, addictions, childhood trauma. And I sold that company at 29 years old for $20 million.
Holy shit.
And
Wow.
a big portion of that was, I won't go into the depth of it, but then I invested in real estate and I had another very successful company. Literally I had 4,000 employees in an investment fund that I had started and billions of dollars under management in my 40s. And I was donating a lot to charity. I was trying to make a difference. But the truth is, I was filled with arrogance and greed and lust and unhealed trauma. And I had a house at one time. I was a bachelor living my house. My house had 10 bathrooms, 8 private suites, 3 kitchens. I had 7 fireplaces in my house. and a basketball court in my basement. And I build a stage on the side of my basketball court in my basement, and I put stripper poles in it. I had a DJ booth behind it. I was having parties
Wow.
every other weekend with senators and powerful people in the community and dressed girls and NBA players, and I thought that I had arrived. I and this was the me that got recruited to help lead undercover child rescue missions. And I thought that it was maybe my Krav Maga skills that they wanted. No, it was my arrogance and greed and lust. That's what the traffickers energy, that's what they were looking for. Now, I wasn't doing anything illegal. I wasn't hurting children. I was helping children with the charities I was involved with. But that was the typical type of client that these traffickers were used to. It was the Jeffrey Epstein type guys in the world. And so that's I have a special set of skills, so to speak, that I was good at saying the right things to the people undercover, and I had some great security guys with me. But that's who I was. And I've been in rooms with the wealthiest people on the planet, and I've also been in rooms with traffickers and victims in the darkest places of this world. And the
Mm,
one thing that I realized is that the battle isn't out there. The battle, the battle is inside. It's the battle between fear and love. It's the battle between lust and ego and seeing another person as the divinity that they are, the child of God that they are. And it's the difference between seeing other people as a commodity versus seeing them as an opportunity to serve. And that's the battle that every person has to fight every day.
mm. Yeah. So are you saying that the reason that you feel that you was chosen is because you fit the mold of what these traffickers are seeking for in a potential buyer, for example? Is that what you're saying? Or was there a part of you, because look, obviously that's one side of it, but there had to be a part of you that had to at least agree to partake in this. And it's not something like I'm going to meet with a gentleman in a coffee shop down the road from my place in an area that I'm familiar with, and I've got all of these undercover agents, and everything's going to be fine and dandy. You kind of walked into the lion's den pretty deep, so it was like, what part of you felt the need to even entertain? I mean, like, you're wealthy. You could have just donated money and just said, "Hey, listen, I will donate money to your cause. I don't want to put my life in any danger. It's worth a lot of money to me and to everyone else that I stay alive and keep running my companies and starting new businesses." Like, what was that part of you that kind of said, I think I want to be a part of this?
It was kind of a three phase. I Number one, in my anxiety depression company, I recognize that a lot of the problems that people deal with come from unhealed trauma. A lot of it sexual abuse as children, and so I recognized how rampant that was. And I was on the Make a Wish board of directors in our area, which helps grant wishes to children who were suffering from cancer or other illnesses. And so there was part of me that had dedicated a big part of my life to helping children already. I had no idea that child trafficking was even a thing until our attorney general had introduced me to a Homeland Security agent who had found these children in Cartagena, Colombia, and they needed $50,000 to do this rescue, to rescue 20 kids. And with me where I was, with $10,000 with Make-A-Wish, I could send a little girl to Disneyland with her family, which was important. She's struggling with cancer, but 50,000 here, we could pull 20 children out of hell. And so it wasn't a problem. I helped make that happen, wrote the check. A few weeks later, the one of the operators called me and he said, "Paul," he said, "I'm here in Cartagena, Colombia. There's not just 20 kids here. There's more than 50 that we've identified and more than 100 children in some other areas." He said, we have a plan. We could rescue all these kids on the same day at the same time. And we have to do it that way because if we take down one cell and rescue 20, the others are going to go into hiding. We've got to do this massive operation, but I need your help. And ego me was like, well, how much do you need? I'll write you a check. And he said, I need you. Can you be in Colombia in 2 days? I said, you need me? He goes, yeah. He said, I don't know how to tell you this, but you kind of fit the profile. He said, I need somebody who can play the role of a wealthy, fucked up buyer who's interested in some horrific things. He said, if you come down here and just tell them, listen, I'm into sex, I'm into girls, I'm into whatever, and I'll write the check, I'll fund. This guy had a piece of property he wanted to develop into a child brothel sex resort. He needed a few $1 million to make that happen, and he had connections with all the other traffickers. And what their plan was is I would fly in, I would come in as me, not, all my other missions later on, I was Paul Stone, Paul Steele, Paul Black, Paul, all of these undercover profiles they created. They didn't have time for that. I came down as Paul Hutchinson, as the multi-billion-dollar fund manager that had pictures all over with me and Ferraris and half-dressed girls. And so he said, you come down, you convince this guy that you're willing to fund his resort under one condition. He throws a party, calls all of the connections that he has with other traffickers, brings all the kids together into one place at one time. And that's when the sting will happen. And we'll take it all down. We'll rescue the kids and you go home. And I thought about that. I thought, okay, he's got some Navy SEALs down there. He's got some protection down there. Yeah. You know what? If there's something about me that can help in this operation, I'll go. And I committed to it. Well, about an hour later, my business partner, John Pennington, called me. He and I were the co-founders of what is now Bridge Investment Group. And he said, Paul, I just heard about what you agreed to. He said, his exact words were, have you thought this through? He said, you're set. You could retire today. You could buy an island, be happy the rest of your life. And I reflected upon that and I said, John, would I really be happy? Because I wasn't happy at the time. I had nice cars. I had a huge house. I had 2 helicopters. I had all this stuff. I said, John, would I really be happy if I bought an island, if I bought a yacht, if I bought another plane? I said, tell me this, if I was doing something else dangerous, if I was climbing Everest tomorrow, you and I would have the same conversation. And he said, yeah, we probably would. I said, and when I'm 95 years old and I'm looking back on my life and I say, I climbed this mountain and I built this multi-billion-dollar company and I helped rescue this many children from slavery, which of those matters at all? And he said, you're right, Paul. He said, if there's something that you can contribute that can make this a success, even if you just rescue one child, it would be worth it. That mission ended up rescuing 124 children, the largest child rescue mission I knew of in history at the time. And more than rescuing the children, it was the first step to rescuing my soul, because I was super lost at the time.
Yeah, I think that deeper sense of connection and meaning and purpose, obviously it seems like an obvious driver for you. Although you're still putting yourself in harm's way. Like I'm curious to know, was there a part of you that was reckless to a degree with your own life? Like,
Absolutely.
I don't want to cast any sort of dispersions your way because I don't obviously know your history, but sometimes you get to a point in life where you feel like you're climbing the ladder of success, to quote Stephen Covey, and you realize that it's leaning against the wrong wall. So it's almost like your whole life's been a lie, despite outwardly huge success and all those sorts of things. So that leads to that emptiness, that feeling of no value. All right, it just despite the all the things that you have, the monetary things, like, like you said, all the possessions and all that kind of stuff. Am I on the right track? Is there a part of you that kind of like, fuck it,
Hundred
I've,
percent,
yeah.
100%. It's it's eye-opening to realize how many people who, as you stated, climbing that ladder, realizing it's against the wrong wall, end up going, "Wow, I just wasted 20 years of my life. I destroyed a 20-year marriage. My second marriage is headed for a divorce. My kids don't talk to me. There's got to be something more, otherwise I'm out."
Right.
And the answer is yes. It was almost reckless on purpose. I didn't want to see myself as one who ended my life with a gun in my mouth on my own accord,
Mm,
but going out in a flame of glory and helping kids, I thought, well, fuck it. I If I die, I die. At least it was doing something somewhat meaningful, more than buying another helicopter and more than having another party.
mm. Yeah, that's intense. And essentially, like, you're giving yourself up as bait. Like, there's a lot of things that could have gone wrong in that initial meeting. Can you walk me through it? I've listened to this story a few times, but I guess people that are listening to this and don't know much about you wouldn't have heard it. But I wouldn't mind just your sort of real life version of um,
That
walking in,
operation.
who you're dealing with, what was going on, what was going through your mind. I mean, obviously you've been in a lot of negotiation arenas, but never one that was involving children. So, like, what was that like?
Well, when I asked the agent, I said, "Look, I'm in Atlanta, Georgia right now. I don't My home's across the other side of the country. I don't have time to fly home and get a new outfit. What do you need me to buy new stuff? What do you need?" He goes, "No, you come dressed as a wealthy business owner, a
Mhm.
wealthy playboy." And I looked down, and at the time I was on the call with him, I literally had cufflinks on I was at a conference with second and third generation billionaire families. I was raising money for my investment fund. And I looked down, I've got a suit on that cost more than my first car. My cufflinks were $2,000 each. I'm like, you know what? I think I have the outfit. And so I grab my Gucci bag and my Ray-Ban sunglasses and jump on a plane the next morning to head down. And there was a layover in Bogota, Colombia. And on the way down, I had never been to Colombia before, and I had heard that Pablo Escobar was there. He was taken out in the '90s, but I didn't know that. And at one point, a life was $200. That's Pablo put a $200 price tag on every police officer's head in the country. And so I thought, oh wow, if I look like I'm worth more than $200, I easily could be a target. And I absolutely looked like that. I was literally flying down there in character. And the layover in Bogota, there was supposed to be an immediate flight to Cartagena. It got delayed. I'm like, crap, okay. So I go out and I had to get a taxi, and mistake number one, don't go into Bogota, Colombia dressed like a.
Sorry, hold up, Paul. Lost your audio.
Well, let's fix that.
You're back now.
We good? Okay, perfect. So yeah, land in Bogota. I get in this taxi with this random guy that wasn't even a legit one, and I said, "Take me to the Marriott." And he's like, starts driving. I'm tired. I'm texting the Navy SEALs that were waiting for me in Cartagena. I says, "I'm going to be a little bit. I have to fly in tomorrow morning instead." And I see the Marriott out of the corner of my eye. I pass on the freeway. I says, "The Marriott." He goes, "Hotel, hotel." And he keeps driving. I think he's just taking another exit. Like four exits later, he takes this exit, and it's a shady part of town. I mean, he pulls over in this old dump place that looked like you could rent it by the hour. There was thugs against the wall, prostitutes over here, drug dealers, and he goes, "Hotel." I'm like, "No, Marriott." He goes, "No, hotel." I said, "No, Marriott." Now, I recognize over the years that, it's important to listen to that still small voice of truth in your heart. It wasn't still and it wasn't small. It was yelling full out, "Do not leave this car." And I finally, now I had fortunately, I had donated a whole bunch of money to the Unified Police Department and some others, and they gave me this badge that was a honorary colonel badge. Looked like a real badge, it just had my name on it. So I reach in my bag, I pull it out, and I show it to him. I said, Policia, Marriott, ahora, police, Marriott now. And so he takes me there. So, and I was thinking on the way to the Marriott, then I'm thinking, crap, maybe John was right. Maybe I should have thought through this. Well, next morning, we fly into Cartagena. The Navy SEALs pick me up in a fully armored, bulletproof car. I'm thinking, okay, yeah, I probably wasn't recognizing how deep this danger might be going. I mean, this car was level 4 armor, and they pull into this beach area with this restaurant that's overlooking the ocean. And they get out and check out the area, and then they come and open my doors, and they're behind me, and the traffickers are up there overlooking and seeing down. And I'm thinking, okay, this is a bigger deal than I thought, and that's when I see these traffickers, and they were businessmen. And the first one I met, he was clean shaven in a nice outfit, and a woman that was running a fake modeling agency. And we negotiate with him, and I halfway through that meeting, one of the traffickers leans forward. He was so excited I was willing to look at his project, his resort for selling children. He leans forward. He goes, Pablo, I have a gift for you. I said, well, really, what's your gift? He hands me his phone, and there's a picture of an 11-year-old child on his phone, a little girl. He said, this is Princess. She's still a virgin. We just took delivery of some, and she's my gift for you for this party. And he started talking about horrific things I could do to this child. And I thought, oh my God, if we could get these children out before they're ever raped the first time, that would be a miracle, because you don't have to deal with all the trauma. And something he said made me realize he had more than her. I said, Fuego, I said, you have more virgins? He goes, oh, yeah, I have 3 or 4 more. I said, yeah, now you're bringing those to my party too, right? With the 50 others? He goes, oh, no. He said, they're too expensive. I said, too expensive? I'm already paying this guy $25,000 for this party, paying him $500 per child for minimum of 50 kids just for 2 hours in the afternoon with him. He goes, Jefe. He says, you already paid 25,000. You wanna fuck these other virgins? It's gonna cost you maybe extra 2,000, maybe 5,000 for that little one. It's gonna cost you maybe 10,000 more. And at this point, Adrian, I was legitimately pissed. There was no acting involved. My ego self came out full force. He's telling me I can't afford an extra $10,000. I fucking made $10,000 the day before on one phone call, right? I'm like, I put my hands on my chest. I'm like, you don't think I can afford an extra $10,000? He goes, oh, no, Jefe, no. I said, I want every one of those, what he called 0 kilometer miles, right? I want every one of those ones at the party. I said, they damn well better be virgins when they get there. They're not for you. They're for me. You understand? He goes, oh, yeah, Jefe, I understand. This stupid smile on his face. 2 weeks later, we go in. They had set up this party, and they had met with the federal agents, had like 25 agents that were coming to storm the party at the right time. We had undercover people that were there. Our maids and our waiters and our cooks were, they weren't very good cooks, but they were armed. And we go in, and these guys show up with 54 children, just like what you saw in the Sound of Freedom movie. 54 kids. And I'm sitting there, and I'm the jefe. I'm the big boss. I'm dressed to the hilt. I've got cash. I've got, and they start loading these children off this boat. And many of them, you could tell they were drugged. They had dressed them all sexy. These are kids. And we're negotiating, and we have undercover cameras everywhere. The kids are in a different part of the house. And after we had all the information that we needed on camera, then we order tequila. That's the sign that the agents, radio the 25 guys that are coming to storm the party. We order tequila, and they bring out the tequila, and nothing happens. They were supposed to hit the party within 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes go by. Well, now that we ordered tequila, the traffickers think that it's time for the party. 2 of them get up, they go in the house where the kids are. And I'm thinking, where the hell are the agents? And we could hear some of the kids crying in the house. This is where things really, I thought, could we need to send some guys in there? What do we do? And he comes back out, and he has 4 virgins, 3 little girls, 1 little boy. This little boy was 11. They had taken him from Haiti. They gave him cocaine that morning because he was so scared. What kind of fucked up monster thinks that that's attractive?
Mm.
Everything in my body was like, I want to help you. I want to tell these kids it's going to be okay. You're going to see your parents. It was just shaking me to the core. And they bring this little girl, the same one he showed me on that picture. She's standing in front of me. Now, Adrian, she had a shirt on with a little kitty cat face on it. She had long braids. She was 11. And her makeup that they had put on her had been smeared because she had been crying. She was so scared of meeting the men who were going to take everything from her. And I was sitting on a chair and she was standing up and we were almost eye level. And all I could see was fear in her eyes. And it shook me to the core. I took her little hands. I asked her, I said, "Como te llamas? What's your name?" And she didn't say her name. I'm sure it's because her real name wasn't Princess. And I just said 2 words, "Está bien." It's okay. And I told the traffickers, it's not time for the party to start yet. I said, you guys just proved to me that you could provide what you said you could provide. I told you that I'd be interested in your resort if you could prove to me that you could fill it by having the party with these kids. You just proved it to me. You bring out these kids, we bring out the cocaine. I'm gonna have a great time, and I'm gonna be fucked up for the next 2 days. So send the kids back inside. Let's just do the business plan right now. I was trying to delay, waiting for these agents to come,
Mm.
and I took out a piece of paper and started writing the darkest business plan you could possibly imagine. Who's the customer? How do you connect with the customer? How big is the demand? Where are you getting the product? How much do you pay for the product? What do you rent the product out for? What's the long-term viability of this? And it got darker and darker by the minute until finally the agents came and stormed the party and arrested everyone. And us included. The guys think that we got extradited to the US to stand trial. And
Wow.
and the thing that really rocked me is that there was 30 child protective services people that came in with the children, and they were in the other room. They were calming them down because of all of the chaos that had happened. So I could hear them in there laughing and singing with the children. And that sound of freedom was the most beautiful sound that I ever heard, compared to the crying that we've heard less than half an hour before. And I turned to the operators with me. I said, "Bro," I said, "I spent my whole life making money, making rich people richer. I want to make a difference. I want to write a check. How much do you need? How can I help?" And that's when he said to me, "Paul," he said, sadly, this kind of thing happens every single week in every single country." He said, "And sadly, a lot of the buyers look and act and dress and talk just like you." He said, "If you're willing to be the bait, I'll change your whole life."
Wow. Yeah. That's several times I've heard that story. It still shakes me up every time that I hear it. I just can't, like you said, I can't fathom how anyone can look at um, something so innocent and want to take that innocence away. It's and I got 3 kids, so to think at their tender age of whatever, 6, 7, 8, 9, 11 years old, like, yeah, I don't think I would. There was nothing that would stop me from committing murder if I ever found out, if that ever happened, and who it was. It would just it's soul destroying, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, over the years of doing all the different missions in 15 countries, I told my operators, I said, "Look, if it's not our job to judge, that's God's job. But if we need to arrange that meeting with God a little bit early, I'm
Yeah,
good with that.
absolutely.
You rape a child, you do that to a child, you're wasting my oxygen." And we had many traffickers that got killed while we were on missions. Most of them were from each other in kind of gang rivalry over who was going to provide the kids and who was going to run the operations. We had one of my operators that got stabbed 27 times
Wow.
in Dominican Republic. One that got killed. I talk about it in the book, The Sound of Freedom.
Mm,
Jim in Haiti. It's a rough world. Port-au-Prince, Haiti is currently the most dangerous city on the planet, and I did
mm.
12 undercover missions there with some of the greatest men I've ever known to take down the trafficking organizations in the Caribbean.
Wow. Well, I know it's a personal question, but did you, I mean, obviously you witnessed some very brutal things happening in terms of traffickers and things you just mentioned, but did you ever have to witness anything of these children getting beaten or tortured or raped, or like, was there anything that you had to really, I guess, buy into the story to
I would I
sell
would have
your end of it?
I would have killed somebody if I saw that firsthand, but I saw it secondhand over and over and over again. I
Really?
had one of my missions in Port-au-Prince, Haiti. We had worked our way up to what I call a level 3 trafficker. They're physically holding the children in captivity, and this was a female
Hmm.
named Cho. It was about 2 in the morning, super dangerous area, and there was the thugs that had worked for her introduced us to her, and there was this red door. It was about 4 feet wide, 7, 8 feet tall, and a steel door in Patientville, just outside of Port-au-Prince. And she sticks a key in this door, and it opens, and I see this dirt hallway dimly lit with spider webs on the lights, and on the left hand side were cell doors. Um, they were five. These cells were 5 feet wide and 6 feet deep. I, you and I couldn't lay down flat in one of them,
Hmm.
and dirt floors. She sticks a key in one of these doors, opens it up. There's no windows at all, and the first thing I see is it's not even a bed. It was a steel plank that was held to the wall with a chain, so you could lift it up, and there was a dirty, dingy blanket that was sitting on that steel plank. And to the left of that was a concrete block. And on this concrete block, with her feet in the dirt, was a little girl. Now, this girl had just turned 14. She was taken when she was 7. Her parents were killed in the earthquake in Haiti. Nobody knew she was alive. And she had been sold. Her innocence had been sold every single day, 10, 20 plus times a day for 7 years. And she looks up at me with this blank look in her eyes, like this happens every day. Now, what made me so mad, Adrian, is that every single man that had walked through that door for 7 years was there to harm her. Andrew McCubbins was my operator that was there with me, an absolute hero in every way. And we were the first 2 men to walk through that door that didn't have that intention. That little girl didn't speak one word for 2 weeks after we rescued her. The first words she said were, "I didn't think anybody would come." She had given up hope 7 years before. Now she's in a healthy family, learning to dance, back in school. Every one of these children has a story. It's a travesty in some way. That if the only, we've heard this so many times, the only thing required for evil to flourish is for good people to do nothing.
So true.
If Andy and myself had chosen to live our lives the way that we were, that little girl would still be there,
Mm,
living out the rest of her life in
yeah.
hell.
Well, you mentioned Haiti a bunch of times. Was there ever a time where you encountered an organization that was a front for for argument's sake, a positive cause. So one of the things that I see a lot of, for example, on a low level, you see um, uh, preschools in Australia, for example. You know, they're havens for pedophilia, and it's almost like you've got a captive audience that's already there. Then you see charities that are like, you know, we're looking after all these kids in Haiti, and we're taking them out of poverty, and we're giving them water and nourishment and all that kind of stuff, only to turn out that those very children have been abused by one of the leaders or the organization organizers of that particular company. Is that something that you come across within the missions that you were completing?
All the time, all the
Really?
time, all the time. You know, sadly, the system was so corrupt in Haiti, and this is the same globally. Well, the system of to adopt a child out of Haiti costs tens of thousands, 40, $50,000 in legal fees and everything else. Well, a
Mm-hmm.
lot of that goes to corrupt politicians that are there, and a lot of the orphanages that um, we had identified trafficking being sold. These kids were being sold to traffickers without any verification that it was a healthy family whatsoever. There were some operations that were purchasing kids out of these areas that were organ harvesting organizations. But yes, it's rampant everywhere. And again, it goes into this predator mindset where if this child is already in a desperate position, they don't have a healthy family, they don't have a father that's going to protect them. The predator instinct comes out in men who are broken already, who were, they're already addicted to child pornography, they're already fantasizing about these things, and then they end up getting a job at one of these places to fulfill those fantasies.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also important to know that, you know, the majority of children that get taken and moved to another country and trafficked in this way, those kids come from broken homes, a broken foster care program, runaways. Parents will leave the movie Sound of Freedom, and they'll be like, okay, I want to do something. I want to help. Well, the worst thing you can do is go to Mexico and try to rescue kids. You're going to get arrested. You're probably going to get shot. The best thing you can do is go home and hug your kids. And people are like, well, how does that make a difference in fixing trafficking? Well, that a healthy nuclear family goes a long ways in not having them be looking like a victim. The foster care programs in the United States are rampant with pedophilia,
Yeah.
rampant. In fact, and because these are kids that are somewhat throwaway kids. If they run away, if they're trying to get out of that situation, they'll just erase their names. 40% of the ones that disappear are never ever looked for again. And
Yeah.
you don't know what happened to them, who took them, if they were involved with something. And so, having a healthy nuclear family goes a long ways in preventing your own children from being abused in this way.
Absolutely. Paul, I went to a Christian high school, a Catholic high school. It was ran by the Christian Brothers, and they had a home for boys. So it was an all boys school, and they had a home for boys called, I think it was called Eddie's Home or Eddie's House, which was a house at the front of the school. And it I think I started there in my first year of high school was around 92, 93, something like that. By my fourth year in high school, our principal was exposed to be a pedophile, and he fled to another state and then uh, killed himself. But
But
that home was a home of abuse in front of the school, which was a Catholic school that has I guess, a prestige in our area as being a very highly educated school to send your boys to have a great education. So,
mhm.
I mean, that is one of many, many stories. We haven't touched the priesthood. We haven't touched, like you said, daycare centers and all those sorts of things where it's right under your very nose. So, I mean, to have these types of conversations, to have the ability to have open communication with your children, try and connect with them on certain particular levels, it requires a lot of you as a parent, because we're all our own versions of fucked up, right? So like we have our own trauma, as you said at the outset of this interview that we're dealing with. And a lot of us aren't really equipped to deal with our own trauma and things that are going on in our life, let alone try and help our children. So I guess it does start with the parent themselves on working on their own shit, and then being able to communicate that through their children, so they can at least have half a chance of having a conversation, and looking for signs, I guess. I mean, the version of Adrian, 10, 15 years ago was just like not even aware of what's going on. But now that you sort of see, you can't unsee. Once you know, you can't unknow. Like you see the signs, the symbols, the indications that something's not quite right. But even then, I mean, it's still happening under our very noses. I think I've heard you say, like, the stats are, it's typically someone within your family unit that is abusing your children. And it's not just a male figure; it's a male and a female, or if it's not both of them, like that's pretty scary.
It is. And this is why the best thing you can do to keep your kids safe is to have a very healthy relationship with them where you are their 911, no matter what. That you need a relationship where your son can call you and say, hey, or your son can sit down with you at night at dinner table and say, Dad, I kind of screwed up. Don't be mad at me, but I was on my online gaming platform. I thought I was chatting with a girl that was my own age, and I sent her some pictures, and she sent me some pictures, and now she's asking me for more videos. Otherwise, she's going to send my pictures all over the school, and now she's asking me to send money and meet at a certain place. It's probably not a 13-year-old girl. It's probably a 45-year-old dude that is using what they call sextortion in hurting your child. Or a healthy relationship where your child can come to you and say, hey, Dad, I was at this school program, and the teacher wanted me to stay after, and wanted us to help me with my homework, and underneath the table he put his hand on my knee, and I didn't feel good about it. And these start with having the conversations with your children where they can feel very comfortable telling you when something's out of place. And because you're right, well over 90% of children who are victims of sexual abuse, over 90% of them, it's familial. It's Uncle Harry. It's somebody that's in the neighborhood. It's somebody that parents know already. And sadly, the average age of somebody talking about it, disclosing what happened as a child, the average age is 52 years old. That's my age. By that time you've raised your kids, you've built your career, and if you're holding on to that pain all those years, here's what's happening. It's coming out. It's coming out in either anger issues or addictions, or it's coming out in anxiety or depression. It's coming out in super unhealthy relationships. And a lot of times you're wondering, people don't even remember what happened because their subconscious brain is blocking that darkness.
Right.
But it's not until the perpetrator dies when you're in your 50s, where the perpetrator's in their 70s, now they're out of the picture. Now your subconscious mind, okay, so now it's safe because that guy who said he was going to kill my family if I said anything, now he's gone. And so that's what happens subconsciously. So it's so important, because here's what happens too. Most people who go through that grow up to be protectors. Most of my undercover operators, they were abused as children as well, but they grew up to be protectors. Sadly, if you hold it inside and never discuss it and hold it in, it's 1/3 of them end up passing on that abuse in either verbal, physical, or sometimes sexual abuse of a child. So the most important thing we can do that can save millions of children is for us as adults to take a look in the mirror and say, okay, what's out of place here? What do I need to do to heal?
Mm.
What are things that I am carrying that if gone unchecked, it's going to affect my children, my grandchildren, even if you're never a person that would abuse them? Is it coming out in those anger issues or that low self-esteem or pornography addictions or whatever else it is that is passing it down in some form
Hmm.
to your children?
Yeah. Yeah, so true. Hey, Paul, how did the Sound of Freedom come about? I mean, in Australia, I'm not sure what it was like in the US, but there seemed to be a lot of pushback as to who was going to be showing the movie. It seemed like a lot of cinemas weren't taking it on. Um, it, it's it that's my recollection of it. It wasn't
Yep.
until sort of some months later that we were able to like subscribe or buy it online. Now, for example, like I can watch it on a streaming platform. But
Mhm.
I mean it's a couple of years later. So what
Mhm.
was it like, and how did it sort of come about in terms of turning into a movie? Because I think people who haven't watched it should, but also they should know like it's very confronting. Those initial scenes are just like I thought this was a movie, not a documentary. I was quite shocked at how it was put together, but I'd be interested to know that how it all came about.
Mhm.
Obviously with Mel Gibson's and Jim Caviezel and all these people that were sort of pulled in to help along.
Absolutely. So we started out with some of the operators recognizing that just doing undercover missions was never going to fix the problem.
Hmm.
It was going to require a global movement, and we couldn't take millions of people to see what we had seen, but we could help millions of people feel what we had felt. And so we took the story to Sony and Lionsgate, Paramount. They were very interested in it, but they wanted full literary control. They could
Right.
put a couple operators in a sex scene of their own in the middle of. We couldn't do anything about it. We're like, no, no, we have to tell the real story. We had about 8 different rescue missions that we had blended together into showing the audience what trafficking was, et cetera. And um, I was at a Grammys after party in Los Angeles, very high end thing. Had Pierce Brosnan there and the president of Mexico and Eduardo Verástegui was there. He ended up being the producer of Sound of Freedom and he actually plays me in the movie. He plays Pablo, the billion-dollar fund manager who funds it and goes undercover on that first mission. Well, I told him the story and he goes, man, brother Armando, we need to make a movie out of this. I said, yeah, we've been talking to Sony and Lionsgate. He goes, I promise you, we can turn this into something really special. And so I was the primary investor. We brought these guys to my cabin and wrote the script all out and became the first executive producer. We brought on a few more later, and then we finished the film and got gridlocked. Hollywood, big media had no interest in this hitting the streets, had no interest in these conversations being had anywhere. Why? Because it's rampant. It's rampant not only in elite circles and political circles, but it's rampant in Hollywood. We saw the tip of the iceberg with what happened with P. Diddy, and there's a lot of people that should be in prison there that they just sadly the most important thing in the eyes of the FBI that they got from that was the videotapes. It's all about blackmail and control. That's what Epstein was all about as well. If you're an agency and you want to maintain control of the vote of a federal judge, of a congressman, if you want to maintain the attention of a billionaire, you get them on film with a 12-year-old and you control that forever. And it's a system of blackmail that is throughout the world, not just here in the U.S. And that's what was happening there in Hollywood as well, is systems of control, and they did not want that to come out. And so we finished the movie. It was completely done, ready for distribution, and got locked up. Disney ended up buying Fox International, who had the distribution rights, and we ended up having to fight back and forth to try to release it from them so that we could distribute it because they had no desire to distribute it. They wanted to just lock it down. And then another Disney executive came on board and said, yeah, I'm going to bring in $20 million and help take this to the world. And he signs this contracts and locks it up for another year. I'm like, are you kidding me? What? I thought that these guys were pro kids, right?
Yeah.
And then when we finally got it unlocked from all of them, we got turned down by everybody. I mean, Netflix turns us down. Now, at the same time, Netflix was running a TV series called Cuties, a bunch of 10-year-olds dressed up as strippers, and they're pushing that narrative and they're
Mm.
turning down Sound of Freedom. Are you kidding me? We have to pay attention to really what the agenda is from big media and Hollywood and what they're trying to feed us and why they're moving us slowly in this direction of immorality across the board. And
Right.
so finally we ended up I mean at this point 5 years later I thought, well, my investment was a wash. I mean the movie is worth a CD that I can set my cup on, and there's nothing more that I lost all that money and we're never going to push this out to the world. But gratefully there was a large audience that was following a company called Angel Studios. And because of the fact that Jim Caviezel had played Jesus in Passion of the Christ, and Angel Studios had pushed out a series called The Chosen, which they had an audience that were very much, fans of that work. And so Angels, I tell people that Sound of Freedom brought to the people by the people. It was just regular guys that not big Hollywood stuff, regular guys that invested in it, regular guys that pushed it out to the world through social media platforms, and it became the number one independent film in the world with over 70 million people who have seen Sound of Freedom now, and I'm incredibly, incredibly grateful. Every single penny that comes back to me and our foundation, every penny from that goes into building healing retreats and safe houses for the children, and into our foundation, the Child Liberation Foundation, and our other foundation, Liberating Humanity. All of it goes to that. We've alchemized that darkness into light.
Wow. Yeah, that's an amazing story. Yeah, it's no surprise to me to hear about all the roadblocks, particularly because it's again, it's that whole sort of predators protecting other predators. Like it's one of those things where you go deep enough into some of these companies, and it's just really scary to hear and see and read about the goings on and just turning a blind eye. It's almost, I mean, as you know, it's a big business, and it makes a lot of money. So it's really sad to see that someone like yourself has to go to the lengths that you go to in order to bring something like this to light. But it shows perseverance and tenacity, and obviously I don't know if it sounds a little bit cheesy, but I think good always wins in the end. I think it rises to the top eventually. The truth always seems to kind of come out over time, although, as it would seem at the moment, amidst all the chaos and the destruction that is a result of everything trying to come out. It's like how did someone explain it to me? It's not so eloquent, like a cocoon, a butterfly coming out of a cocoon. It's almost like a big pimple at the end, like it's all this pussy shit and mess that's going to come out, but at the end of it, everything has a chance to heal. So yeah, full props to you, man, as to having the ability to keep pushing through it and to experience the things that you did. I personally don't know if I could put myself in that situation. So I really appreciate you from one man to another. Paul, I really value your time, and I want people to find out more about you, buy your book. If they haven't seen Sound of Freedom, they need to go and watch it. But how can people connect with you and maybe support you and follow your mission?
I would be super grateful. Well, first of all, the Sound of Freedom book, the true stories that inspired the film, is available on Amazon, and 100% of the proceeds from that go to the foundation and building healing retreats, etc. You can go to liberatinghumanity.com book.com. So I have it here. So it's just super. You can find tools to keep your kids safe, links to the books, and tools that we as adults can use to find healing in our own lives. I love the little short story of a man who's sitting on a couch, and his little boy comes in and says, "Daddy, I want to play baseball." And he's like, "Oh, I'm reading the newspaper. I'm busy right now." And the boy goes outside, and the boy comes back in a little while later, and he says, Daddy, it's a beautiful day outside. Please, can we play baseball?" And the father turns the page, and he sees an advertisement of something, and it has a map of the world on it. And he has this idea. He tears out this round map, and he tears it up a little piece of paper, and he throws it on the ground, and he says, "Son, you need to learn your geography. You go get some tape together every single country, every single ocean, every state, everything exactly where it needs to be. And when you finish that, I'll go play ball with you." Well, he thinks it's going to take an hour, and his little boy, like 5 minutes later, comes back, and it's taped together perfectly. And the dad says, "Well, how did you do that?" And the little boy says, "Well, I just turned it over. There was a picture of a man on the other side. I just put the man together, and the whole world came together." And that's really how we fix this. We can sit here and be super mad and try to go out and fix the world. But the truth is, it's really about the man in the mirror. It's about the man inside. All of this stuff wouldn't have happened with the previous version of me. There had to be some significant changes that went through in my life for me to come from a place of the heart and say, you know what, that extra money isn't going to pay for a Aventador, a Lamborghini. It's gonna pay for some operations. It's gonna fund a movie. It's going to push push the needle so that we can really make long-term change. And so I have another book coming out soon. It's called Your Infinite Wealth, the golden age of conscious capitalism, because I really believe that the problems that we have that end up with domestic abuse and addictions and even things like child trafficking, they start in the boardroom. They start with how we treat each other. Do we see world as a dog eat dog energy of a take from somebody else to achieve success, or can we really see business and money and wealth in a true win-win-win, a value for value type of a mindset, an abundance mentality? And so it's all connected together in what it's going to take to help to liberate humanity from this darkness.
That's amazing. We'll have to come back and talk about that. I think that'd be a really interesting conversation, but if you're open to it.
Would love that.
But until then, me too, man. It'd be so good. Until then, I'm truly grateful for you. I really respect you and the work that you've done. I think that, yeah, it's just what you created in terms of the movement is an amazing movement, and I think everyone should be a party to it in some way, shape, or form. But I think the fact that that message that you're delivering is starting from within your own home, and making sure that everything's right and good there with yourself and with your higher power or whatever that is for you. I think that is a truly important part. But I appreciate you, man. I really look forward to having another conversation.
I look forward to that. Thank you, Adrian. Super grateful for you sharing me with your audience today.
You're welcome, man. Well, until we meet again, I'll talk to you soon, okay?
All right. See you, brother.